We are back. Welcome to the Junkyard Dawgcast, everybody. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. With me, Rusty Mansell of Dogs 24/7. Him and Kip are switching off, and we're back. Quick turnaround, man. Quick turnaround. Less than 24 hours later, live show on YouTube. Glad you guys are with us. We got a mailbag podcast. Mailbag podcast. Sure. If you're listening to this on Thursday morning, but it's a mailbag live show. If you're listening to it on Wednesday at around, 9:15, 9:20 a.m. I got some coffee right here next to me. I'm sure Rusty's got some somewhere in the general vicinity that he can reach right now. But we want to get Rusty's thoughts on Georgia's commitments from last week, since he was on the road yesterday and couldn't join us. We're going to do Wednesday leans for Georgia, Florida, and then it's mailbag. It's straight up mailbag. We're going to answer some questions from the Dogs 24/7 Junkyard, and we're also going to answer some questions from our live YouTube commenters. And Rusty, let's jump into this thing. Two big-time defensive linemen, a 5-tech edge player in Michael Williams, a nose 3-tech in Bear Alexander. What are your thoughts on those two guys and Georgia's ability to get them in this class? Because it did not look 2 months ago like either one of them were going to be in this class.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I thought Bear Alexander was going to be a tough get. And I made that comment several times on the Junkyard, if you follow us on Dogs 247, that getting him, at the end of the day, getting him out of the state of Texas was going to be hard for Georgia. However, the variable got introduced and he went to IMG. And I think that, him getting away from, just to be honest with him, a lot of people want him to go to Texas A&M there. That's the nature of it. I mean, kid was in Georgia, and there would be a lot of people wanting him to go play for the Georgia Bulldogs. But I think when he got to IMG, he made that visit early on a couple of weeks ago, and he just kind of said he was done with it. So it surprised me. But at the end of the day, what literally a massive get for Georgia, because you see that picture beside him and Jordan Davis that kind of circulated everywhere this summer, kind of circulated everywhere last week. This is a Georgia defense. When they've got a nose guard like this, the Georgia defense goes. And with Jordan Davis and some of those guys, making it go this year, but they've got their guy for the future in Bear Alexander. I think he's a tremendous football player, a great fit for this Georgia defensive line scheme, what they do. You look at Michael, and, Jake, you've been doing this a long time too. There's only so many body types like that can he can play anywhere from 3 to a stand-up 9 if he has to. Right. So you look at him, and he's 262 pounds, 6'5". This kid's going to weigh 275, 280 before he blinks an eye. But the biggest thing for me with somebody like Michael, he's a great kid, really good, just kind of grounded young man. Even though he committed to USC and then decommitted and went to Georgia, this is not like a drama kid. He doesn't look for that. This kid loves freaking ball, man. And I'll give you a prime example. He probably had 20 offers last year at this time. He calls me up and wants to play in the Georgia Elite Classic, an all-star game I'm involved with in December. And I said, Michael, look, man, this game is about kids trying to get to where you are. You don't have to come up here and play. Not only did he say, Mr. Mansell, I want to come play, he came up here and he was dominant, man. I mean, they had to. I bet he had 5 or 6 sacks in an all-star game. But it told me a lot about Michael, and I'll tell you this: the kid played his tail off. I'm doing the broadcast on TV. I turn around, he's holding the change for the next game. So that tells you how much ball that kid loves. He loves to be around it. I told the behind-the-scenes story on him. On the board, he called me up in March and gave me the story. He committed to Georgia. They decided he silently committed to Georgia. They decided to open up visits. And then when he did, everybody else got back involved. So at the end of the day, go through all this kid was a massive, massive get, not only for what he does on the field, but who he is off the field. Those two, Jake, in 2 years from now, that last week was a big deal for Georgia.
I had a high school football coach, Craig Tyre, rest in peace. He has since passed away. And Craig loved to smoke cigarettes. And I'll never forget him sitting in the Atkinson County coach's office one time, kind of letting talking with a cigarette hanging out of the side of his mouth. And he talked about how he liked kids who loved grass. They just love to be around that big old patch of grass at a football field. And sounds like Michael Williams is one of those guys. He's a grass sniffer. He likes to smell it. He likes to be on it, stand on it, get his shoes a little wet with that little dew on the ground that comes out right as the sun goes down. It cools down a little bit. So that's a cool thing to hear about him. And a little bit behind the scenes on this one. I can't remember what I was doing. I was working on something. All of a sudden, Rusty's name pops up on my phone, and we had talked twice that day already. And Rusty calls me again, and he goes, "Hey, Bear Alexander's committed to Georgia. Get this. Get it now. Let's go." And I was like, "Oh shoot," that I didn't say, "Oh shoot," but
literally that's how. And in the world in the world we're in, Jake, very rarely does something like this catch the industry off guard.
Yeah.
Nobody had a story. The kid just tweeted it. You just like I have Kirby Smart on, Twitter alert. So when he tweets, I'll get one. He hit a Go Dogs, and I was like, wait a minute. I go to Twitter, don't see anything. I go to Instagram. The first thing I see on Instagram was Bear Alexander committing to Georgia. I said I was on a conference call. I hit real quick, Jake. Now he's committed.
Yeah.
So, no kudos to you because you didn't ask any questions. You were like, okay, hung up and gone. That's how quick that thing happened. And those don't happen very often. I did make a comment on our junkyard about 2 weeks ago in a dog treats, our little Monday deal, which by the way, we'll get dog treats today, a little later this morning. But I made the comment for the first time in a long time. I felt like Georgia had made a big move with him, and that move to IMG, I think, was a really good deal for Georgia. Got around some more kids there like Georgia and things like that. So I think, that thing went down quick, but I thought Georgia had definitely made a move. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I didn't think it was coming this soon.
Yeah, you might have led with the Go Dogs. You might have been like, "Hey, Kirby just tweeted Go Dogs. Bear Alexander committed to Georgia on Instagram. Write it. Let's go."
I was happened quick. So
Rusty sounded like LL Cool J on the other end of that line. I mean, he was it was quick. It was fast.
That's my guy.
But I mean, yeah, you're right. It rarely does, kind of catch you by surprise. These things happening. But that was one that kind of came out of nowhere. And Rusty, just real quick before we move on for this. I'm not sure how much time there was, but I'm 99% sure there was an overlap between Michael Williams being committed to USC and Bear Alexander being on Georgia's commitment list. At that point in time, listen, I have like a 10,000-foot view of this. I would have told you then I felt better about Michael Williams being in Georgia's class than Bear Alexander being in Georgia's class, because I knew Bear was going to be – because it was opposite situations. You knew USC – had a fight on their hands, coach or not, hanging around to hang on to Michael Williams. And you knew Georgia had a fight on their hands hanging on to Bear Alexander. And now Georgia's got both of them. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Big deal. Big deal. Those two. I mean, you look what Georgia, what drives them. That defensive line is the first thing every NFL scout, every person of media, every time Georgia's on TV, they're talking about that D line. And these two kids right here, they'll be the next set of kids that people will be talking about here in 2 years from now.
All right, man. Wednesday leans, Georgia, Florida. There's the world's largest outdoor cocktail parties this week. And between staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning watching the Braves and all the recruiting stuff going on, it doesn't seem like it's front and center as much as it probably should. At least for me, probably should be. But Wednesday leans, man. Where are you at on this game as of the middle of the week?
It's the same thing for me. I mean, if you're elite, you're going to win this game because you're the better football team, and you've put a better sample size on your roster, on your resume. You go into this game, and this is one that you should win. Now, I'll tell you this: every Georgia fan, especially over the age of 40, understands some crazy stuff has happened in Jacksonville, and that's the type of game you go down there. I think. If you've never went to Georgia, Florida, by the way, I got to say hey to my man Cecil Sanders. It's 5:20 in Alaska. Cecil, tell me what the weather is like in Alaska right now, but that's worthy of a shout out there in our comments. But
felt like Alaska here about 6 o'clock this morning when I let the dog out.
For us, this is a cold front. But I think if you've never experienced a Georgia, Florida game, just find a way to go. Just find, and it's now 2 more years guaranteed, locked into 2025. The new contract. So when you go there, it's a unique experience. It's a bowl game atmosphere. It's a crazy atmosphere. Both teams are going to be sky high. A lot of emotions right here. I say it all the time. I don't have to say much. That'll be the shortest handshake you'll ever see after a game between Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart. and that'll say it all there. So there's a lot of things going on with this game. It's a huge game, always in the East, and Georgia's ranked number 1 in the country, number 1 recruiting class in the country. This would save the season for Florida, any type of thing, if they could upset Georgia right here. So my lean is, if you're elite, you're the better team, you win this football game, and I think Georgia does right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think, once again, I've said this, feel like I've said this so many times this year. Bad matchup, tough matchup for Florida. You look at how much they, and I think I just said Florida, like my great grandmother, Florida. Okay, get that O in there. Tough matchup for the Gators because, again, they need to run the ball. They really need to run the ball. Georgia's really tough to run the ball against. Does that mean Florida can't? No, not at all. But is it going to be hard? Yeah. And they're going to have to play extremely well to be able to do that. Rusty, I'll say this. I think if Georgia gets off to the start they got off to last year,
yeah,
they'll roll in this one. They will absolutely steamroll Florida because it's just a different team. It's a different, you're looking at 3 losses. This might, if Georgia can get it, it'll give Florida 3 losses in a row. Rusty, I saw a graphic yesterday. You've probably seen the same thing. Since the Florida game last year, Georgia's 11-0. Florida has lost 6 games.
8-6.
8-6 since the Georgia game last year. I mean, you want to talk about kind of, going in 2 separate directions there. And, JT Daniels, who was a big part of that, starting to kind of get an idea of what he's going to be available to do on Saturday. Rusty, it sounds like, Kirby said he didn't see any limitations in yesterday's practice. What's your take on the quarterback situation real quick before we jump into a break?
Both are going to play. I think both are going to play. This is the game last year where the fan base kind of started questioning Stetson Bennett. I mean, I think Stetson.
Well, I think it's where they turned on him. They were questioning before, but they really kind of flipped the script at that point.
This was the game last year. So, Stetson Bennett's playing a hell of a lot better. I mean, he is playing a hell of a lot better this year, and that's progression. You get into a second year of starting a lot of games in the SEC for a team. It's going to be interesting how he plays this weekend, how much JT Daniels plays, what he looks like after coming off a long break here to see. But, I don't have a clue who starts, but I'm fairly confident that both guys play. And I think, Jake, at the end of this game on Saturday, you talked about this yesterday. I think at the end of this game, on Saturday, we're going to know where Georgia's leaning with their quarterback situation.
Yeah.
Because this is a must win for Georgia. They need to keep this streak. They need to keep this momentum. This is a huge game for a lot of reasons. But I think Saturday night, when those lights shut off in Jacksonville and you're doing your last story, I feel very confident that you're going to know where this Georgia Bulldog staff is at and who they think their guy is. I
agree with that for sure. And I'll say this too, in terms of kind of I don't want to say turn on him because I don't think anybody, roots against Stetson Bennett, but I think this is the game last year where Georgia fans wanted to turn the page. And I feel like in a way that's unfair because, the guy separated his shoulder on his throwing shoulder. They had to kind of numb it up a little bit to give him a chance to go back out there.
Yep.
Kirby said this week he could barely feel it, so I think he ended up making a bad throw after that. I think he ended up maybe throwing a pick or something like that. But he was on fire before that, and I think he can play winning football for Georgia. And it's cool to see a guy get better because everybody assumed last year since he was a fourth-year player he was maxed out. But, he didn't have fourth-year player game snaps at that point. He's got a lot since, gotten a lot better, got a lot more comfortable, and Georgia has 2 quarterbacks to play winning football. And based on everything I've heard, Rusty, they've got 2 kind of minimal ego type guys who are chomping at the bit to compete, but they want Georgia to win football games. Yep. And that's first for them. And really fortunate situation for Georgia. And I think if they handle this thing right, it can be a big strength of this football team. Let's take a break here real quick. On the other side, we're going to answer your questions. We've got mailbag. Real quick before we start this mailbag thing, Rusty's popped into my head. I thought about this. I was on XM Radio, SEC with SEC Network Radio, sorry, with Jacob Hester and Aaron Murray yesterday. And Aaron Murray asks me my thoughts on Georgia's quarterback situation. I had to be like, man, do you understand the irony of you asking me this? Like, I mean, I've never, I think I played quarterback in an advanced lineman camp at Georgia back in like 1999 when, you know, I was the only sub 300-pound dude there because it was like a linebacker lineman type deal. I've never played quarterback other than that. So I'm not qualified. I don't always agree with him on the way he thinks about it, but golly, that caught me off guard talking about mailbag questions.
Yep.
But the BGB dog, what are some matchups for RD, Georgia's D versus Florida's offense that can give them major problems? You know, Rusty, I don't really see a matchup that Florida specifically can exploit. You know, you look at the running backs versus the linebackers in coverage. That was something that gave Georgia problems a year ago.
Yep.
Those tight ends. I don't think Florida is necessarily as precision based in the passing game as they were last year to maybe take advantage of that fully. That's probably the only one I would really point to because otherwise I think Georgia matches up incredibly well. What's your take on that one?
Anthony Richardson's the guy that worries you because he's a freak athlete. He's got a big arm. Now, he doesn't have a ton of reps, doesn't have a ton of experience. He's a guy that there could be a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But I'll tell you this, as a big-time athlete as he is and playing quarterback, you have to know where you have to defend all 11 guys on that side of the ball when he's in there. So, I think he's the guy. If I'm sitting in that staff room with Kirby Smart, Dan Lang, and those guys on Sunday and Monday, you got a game plan to know where this guy is and know how he can hurt you because that's the one variable that can give you big time problems, in my opinion. That Will Route and Kyle Pitts and all those guys, Trask, those guys are gone. So that kind of, Florida played their tail off last year, and they just completed some really good balls and. They gave Georgia's linebackers some matchup problems. They don't have that type of personnel right now to bring to this game, but they do have Anthony Richardson, and that's a guy that if I'm Georgia, you better be aware because he can change some things in a hurry.
I see some younger Bo Nix in him. He's obviously willing to run.
Yep.
But one thing I noticed about him, Rusty, is if you get a little pressure on him in the backfield, if you can get your hands on him, he does not like taking a sack. He does not like giving up on a play and throwing it away. He'll heave it up. He'll flip it up. And I think Georgia's got to play a really good game up front when Florida drops back to pass to kind of keep him boxed in, to get hands on him, to affect him. And I'm really interested to see how they handle it because Florida fans just don't seem to be all that optimistic. And maybe it's just the 2 losses in a row that they're just going to hand the football to him and let it ride. I don't see any way they don't. But I also didn't see any way TJ Finley was going to didn't start against LSU, and Bo Nix, has since kind of turned the corner a little bit as a quarterback and gotten to become a better player. All right, we're going to bounce them off each other here, Rusty. I thought we would both give a take on that one. This one's coming to you. Charleston Dog, who will be our most impressive regular season? What will be our most impressive regular season win at the end of the year? Seems like every ranked team we've played has lost at least once since you played them. Well, Auburn has not lost, I don't think, since Georgia beat them. No. I think that's the one that hasn't. Arkansas's kind of went on a skid. Kentucky hasn't had a chance to lose anything yet. What will be Georgia's most impressive win, Rusty? Let's say they went out in the regular season. Which one's it?
That's a good question, Charleston. You know what, man? I've got because what Auburn still has to go play Texas A&M. They still have to play Alabama. They still got to play Ole Miss. That's a lot. That's a lot of meat left on the bone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the year, when you go back and look, I think Kentucky's going to be a team. I think Kentucky is, if they can get healthy on the defensive side of the ball, they were just kind of outmatched playing Georgia. I think Kentucky's going to have a really good season, and that's a good thing for Georgia if Kentucky continues to win out to have that. So I think Kentucky, if you want to talk about rankings, may potentially be the highest ranked team at the end of the year that Georgia winds up beating the regular season.
Yeah, and Auburn's a super big time wild card because if they find a way to win 2 out of 3 and you won that game on the road, like you said, there's a lot of meat left on that ball. Granny gets mad if you throw that chicken leg away. There is a lot of meat left on that ball.
My goodness.
So I can't believe what they've got left.
Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M.
What a schedule for all. They kind of had to go beat LSU before LSU imploded.
Sure.
So I mean, it's that was or maybe even caused that implosion. Ward 21. Could we get some updates on freshman offensive linemen like Wilson, Fairchild, Blasky? What are you hearing about them? Yeah, I mean, listen, all these guys, all three of those guys are just behind as far as the veterans in front of them. Georgia's got a lot of guys in front of them that have played a lot of football. You've got Jamari Sawyer, senior, going in his second season as a starter. Justin Schaefer, he started games in 3 different seasons now. 5th-year senior, super senior. Cedric Van Pram was maybe the spot that that area was where a youngster can break in. Well, the youngster broke in and he did it. Warren Erickson has just played so much football, and I get it that a lot of folks, as far as an execution standpoint, point of attack standpoint, in some ways, yes, that has been a little bit of a weak link on Georgia's offensive line. But I'll tell you what, it's gotten better. And Warren Erickson's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's not going to bust assignments very often. I mean, you've seen Cedric Van Pran kind of bust more than Warren Erickson has. And there, listen, if you get run over at the line of scrimmage, you're at least slowing a guy down. But if you block the wrong guy and let somebody come free, that's a turnover, that's an interception, that's somebody gets hurt type deal. And I think that reliability there with Warren Erickson has been huge. And then you look at right tackle there, Warren McClendon, just an unsung hero, does something, week in and week out to help Georgia win and never gets noticed for it. With that said, I think if you're looking at those 3 guys, Blasky is probably ahead of the rest just because he's in his 2nd year on campus. I do think his long-term future is going to be on the interior, even though I think he can bump outside, maybe help you with some depth there. Jared Wilson, very impressive guy. I know they've got high hopes for this kid. They think he's going to be a big-time player. I think his future is also at guard. I don't necessarily – he took some snaps in preseason camp. Don't really see center. And I really haven't heard a whole lot about Dylan Fairchild. One of the first things I did hear about him was, coming from the high school ranks to here, it's been a little tough for him to kind of pick up the system. It's been and that's not abnormal at all because Georgia is multiple up front, both in pass protection and in run blocking. So I think it's probably going to take him a little bit of time. And he's a guy that, I could definitely, kind of hear it in my head right now, Kirby Smart this spring being like, hey, Dylan Fairchild's come a long way. We think he might be able to help us. We think he's competing in there. So that's kind of what I would look at there. Quantum Supremacy. Man, what a name. And it's tough to read that together. I'm so glad I got it right with my marble mouth. Could you review the season's reasons, tradition, controversy, and why Georgia, Florida is always played in Jacksonville? I don't know the genesis of this, Rusty, but I know right now it's about the green. It's about the money. And it's also about tradition, but both teams make money hand over fist playing this game in Jacksonville.
It's almost like a bowl game payout. I mean, it's like playing in the Citrus Bowl in October. Now, I don't know that he said it quite like this way, but Kirby Smart wants his home and home. And the reason he wants his home and home, because that dude's all about recruiting. And so if Georgia played Florida this weekend in Athens, I mean, it would be the biggest recruiting weekend of the year. They would have,
even with Florida being 4-3. Imagine if Florida's number 7 in the country. Yeah.
I mean, it would be the biggest recruiting weekend of the year. Fast forward to next year when Georgia plays in Gainesville, it would be the biggest recruiting day of the year for Florida. So those two coaches, that's the kind of the deal there. It's just an important game to play home and home. Alabama and Auburn used to play in the old Iron Bowl in Birmingham. Now they play home and home. So the tradition is there. It's a unique experience. It's a great experience. I've been 5 or 6 times. But I understand from the other side of it, at the end of the day, what Kirby Smart's thinking, and that man doesn't turn off his recruiting switch. And that game would be a massive home game in Athens every other year, and it would be huge for recruiting. They could have a ton of kids from all over the country come to that game. So that's what he's thinking. The reason is what you just said, Jake. It's all about that green, and both of these universities get a ton they get bowl game money from the city of Jacksonville to come down there.
And they don't even pay travel out of their own pocket. City of Jacksonville takes care of the travel. Heck, it's probably one of those like per diem type deals where they make money off the travel. because I think that travel stipend is significant. And so they probably make a few, 5 figures, maybe 6 figures off the travel, coming in under budget there.
Yeah.
But, I've seen Kirby Smart do this a lot of times, talking about his team improving incrementally.
Yeah.
And, I know Georgia fans are saying, well, Georgia's got the #1 class. How much better can they get in recruiting? Kirby Smart's looking for that. If that's all it takes. If he can get that much better, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's, that much better. If he can get that much better, he'll do it. And that's just kind of the way he looks at it. And, I think one of the reasons, Rusty, he hasn't gone all in on this whole thing. He hasn't just said, this game needs to be a home and home. He hasn't said it like that.
No.
He's definitely kind of let you know where he's leaning on it.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons he hasn't is I think Kirby knows that Georgia football is probably going to go on after him. And,
Sure.
and you don't want to be the guy who made all the changes. And I mean, heck, he's already loaded Georgia's schedule up with a bunch of stuff that that somebody else may have to deal with 15 years.
Probably rethinking that. But I'll tell you this: the South Georgia people, there's some big time South Georgia donors, University of Georgia, big time alumni. They definitely, that's their game of the year to come here, and to come to Jacksonville. So regardless of what I think, that game's staying in Jacksonville for the time being, at least till 2025. I think Kirby Smart loves that tradition. And he played a really good game there in '97. Had an interception early in that game, I believe, or late in that game. But at the end of the day, it's about recruiting, and I know what that staff, how they're thinking, and they're wishing kind of that, hey, we were having a home game this weekend and had a bunch, because I always thought if they did, it would be opposite of when they played Auburn on the road. So they played Auburn on the road. So probably this would be the year that Georgia would host that game. So end of the day, doesn't matter. It's staying in Jacksonville. And Jake, you hit it spot on. It's all about those Benjamins, baby. And it is. They're getting a lot to get on a plane to go play.
And you're right. As somebody who grew up in South Georgia, there's a lot of people that would absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it would devastate them, but there are a lot of people would be pretty upset about it.
Sure.
And the local economy there in St. Simons and all that would suffer a little bit, but Athens would benefit. It's just one of those things, and we'll see kind of how the future of it goes. All right, I'm looking for. Okay, yep, there it is, right there. Now I see the comment. Do you guys think our secondary has improved over the course of the season? Are the special teams a concern for you later in the season? Rusty, what's your take on that one?
I don't. Let me say this without stirring things up. I really don't know how good Georgia's secondary is, to be honest, because you know why? They don't have to cover long.
Right.
You got about 3 seconds. The ball better be turned loose, or you're going to be looking at the stars. And I think Darren Kendrick and Keely Ringo and those guys have done a really good job. I haven't seen them against a real good vertically, threatening passing team with 2 freak show wide receivers yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm not saying they're not good. I'm just saying I don't really know yet how good they are because they don't have to cover long, and they may not have to cover long all year. So, but I think, I made this on a podcast yesterday. I made the comment, we don't talk much about Darren Kendrick, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because that means he's handling business on his side of the field. Keely Ringo's a guy that keeps coming on. I'm still on the sideline in Kentucky, and I really watched Keely Ringo. And they came at him a little bit on those bubbles and stuff, and he's a physical guy, can get off blocks. He's big. We know he can run. So, I don't have concerns. I kind of just don't know really how good they are. They've been banged up there too, and they're getting some bodies back. Chris Smith would be huge to get back. So that concerns on special teams, Pod's missed a couple. He's missed a couple, and sooner or later, I tell every Georgia fan, sooner or later, Georgia is going to have a field goal or something late to win one of these games as these games get bigger down the line. So he nailed one last year in Mercedes-Benz. He may have to nail another one this year in Mercedes-Benz. So you kind of want him to clean that up a little bit. But, when the game was on the line in the Sugar Bowl last year or the Peach Bowl, he delivered.
He did. And I think Georgia's return game at some point is going to kind of start to improve a little bit too as Kieris kind of gets a little healthier. Kenny McIntosh gets healthy. Cody Broom says, do you think Stetson's improvement is a product of coaching adjustments for him, or do you think he's improved as an individual player? I think both. I mean, I think both of those kind of come true because I think Stetson's more decisive, Stetson's more accurate, and Stetson is making better decisions. I also think he's more comfortable and he can anticipate things a little bit better. So that's on the Stetson end. On the coaching adjustment end, I like how Georgia is doing a good job of moving him around in the pocket. It's cut down on the batted balls. I don't recall one. There may be one or two, but it's cut down on the batted balls. I think Stetson is he's quick enough that he can kind of make a man miss out there and get some yardage for you if you need it, or he can kind of buy some time and work a little bit more than just half the field. I also like the fact that they're dialing up some max protection, double move type stuff, because it's hard to bat a ball down at the line of scrimmage when you're airing that thing out 55 yards. And Stetson, I think, the Auburn game was a prime example. Some of those throws, he underthrew that one to Ladd McConkey when it was an absolute massive layup, but he also hit Ladd in stride on the post. So I think it's a little bit of both, and I hate to use that as kind of a cop-out answer. If I had to say one more than the other, I'm going to give credit to the player because he's the guy who had to kind of go out there and he's the one that has to execute these coaching adjustments that are given to him. So I would, if I had to pick one, I would say Stetson's improved that much more. But I also think they've made some adjustments to really help him out. Rusty, what's your prediction? This is from Cecil Sanders from Alaska, I believe. What's your prediction on where this recruiting class ends up ranking? Kirby's best yet?
That's according to how they finish out. The numbers there, we anticipate them going 30, probably 29, 30, 31, maybe because of the adjustment on the initial 25 counter. It sounds like it's going to take place. You look at these things, and if Kirby finishes number one, like everybody's high-fiving. But if Georgia finishes number 3, they're like, oh, we missed a couple. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, I mean, what's when we go back and look, there's not a ton of difference between 1 and 3.
No.
So when you look at these things, I think the biggest thing, I always look at it like this. Rankings are rankings, and that's part of the industry I'm in. But the biggest thing is, did you fill your needs? Did Georgia go out and get what they needed at positions? And I think right now, what I know publicly and what I know privately, based off some guys, I think that Georgia's well on their way to a very high recruiting class. But at the end of the day, they are filling some big-time needs at positions of needs. And I think this is going to be another one of Kirby Smart's elite classes.
I look at some of the big time guys they've got a good shot at here. Kamari Wilson, Julian Humphrey, Singletary.
Singletary, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at some of these guys and you're thinking, man, if they bat 1,000 on these guys, I don't know how in the world they're not the number one class. Somebody's just going to have to surge right past them with a stronger close.
There's some guys talking to Georgia right now that not one person in the recruiting industry has written about. I can tell you that. And if they can close a couple of those, this would be up there for sure.
Rusty, stirring that pot, man.
Hey,
stirring that pot.
Got to keep it warm, man.
I can already hear it now. I'm going to be walking through that parking lot in Jacksonville on Saturday. Somebody's going to grab me by the shirt, and I'm going to have to resist the urge to take a swing at them because I'm got social anxiety in these large crowds. They're going to say, "Hey, who's Rusty talking about?" So that's going to happen.
And I'm not telling you. I mean, I just.
All right, Eric Dukes, last question. You think White or Cook can run for over 100 yards against this Florida defense? Brother, if that Davis Price cat can rush for 287 or however many he rushed for, if he can break Herschel Walker's all-time record as far as rushing yards against Florida, yes, I believe Zamir White or James Cook can go over 100 yards. Zamir White had 75 on the first play last year and went over 100. I wasn't entirely sure why they didn't maybe feed him a little bit more, but, they also got themselves in a little bit of a shootout there and kind of had to keep up, and the defense helped them keep up. I think both guys will have an opportunity because there are some systemic things in Florida's defense that they've got to get corrected over these last couple weeks that I don't know that they can. And it wasn't just the play call, the counter play that LSU was running at them. Florida had linebackers, and I don't normally do this to opponents or anybody, but Florida had defensive linemen, edge players, linebackers just turning down blocks. running from them. And if they do that against Georgia, Georgia's going to have a 100-yard rusher, maybe a 200-yard rushers, maybe 3 100-yard rushers, because Todd Monken has shown you that if it's there and you can't stop it, he'll keep doing it. And
Arkansas.
that's one of my biggest compliments to Todd Monken as a coordinator. You see a lot of these guys who are as good at scheming up the pass game as he is. If you can't stop the run, he's not going to risk an incompletion or waste it down throwing the football. He's just going to bloody your nose over and over again. And Georgia's got some backs to do that with. Rusty, I think that's all we got, man. And we got picks.
Sure.
We got picks.
I'm out of coffee, man. I'm out of coffee, so we're in emergency overtime, right? We're in Penn State overtime right here.
Oh God! Oh man! 2-point conversion analysts being hired to staffs all over the country.
Yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm watching that game. I'm like, is this really going on? Like,
Rusty,
I made a tweet. I said this was the perfect time to bring 2 captains in midfield and just paper, rock, scissors.
Yeah,
just
perfect time.
Back,
Rusty, I tell you this too, man. Me and you, Mike, could make a solid business decision right here if we would just pivot and dive headfirst into 2-point conversion analysis. We might could start a firm and get hired out by these schools,
no doubt.
And kind of become like the national preps of 2-point conversions, charging $50,000 a year each school. Maybe we could get paid. Who knows how good we'd be at it. But all right, guys, that's all we got for this. We're going to make our picks tomorrow. And maybe we'll have some clarity on some other situations. Get to talk to Kirby here at about 11:10 Eastern on the SEC conference call, and we'll tell you what we know and we'll tell you what we expect sometime tomorrow on Thursday. But for this one, that's all we got. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. He's Rusty Mansell from the same place, and you all take it easy.